Welcome on in. You hear that new intro music? And if you're joining us on the live stream, new branding. This is the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm your host, John McKechnie. Purple Rain edition. We're 2 days into the new era of RotoWire. We got fresh looking new website, new logo. Good stuff all around. If you look behind me, I got a slightly out of focus RotoWire placard on my wall. And yeah, we're rocking and we're rolling. This podcast brought to you by our friends over at Circa. A lot to get to today. We're going to get into some tight end job battles. We're going to do a little check in on the Scott Fish Bowl. Started my draft last Saturday at the live event here in Atlanta. So we're not as far along as maybe would be ideal for 4 days in, but I digress. And then we will end up with our patented deep dive. This time we're going to take a look at the Carolina Panthers. But let's start things off. Luckily for us in the content world, we got a trade earlier this week involving the Pittsburgh Steelers and involving tight ends. We saw the Pittsburgh Steelers move on from Minkah Fitzpatrick, send him back to Miami, where it all started. The Steelers get Jalen Ramsey and the long rumored. It's almost like the Jonnu Smith was the Aaron Rodgers of the tight end world. Like we knew he was going to be a Steeler at some point. It felt like, and finally that day has arrived. So, your thoughts on this move, and now that we have this Steelers offense that I think was already kind of confusing to figure out how it was going to work for fantasy. Like I think you could safely project all the targets that DK Metcalf could handle, and then everything else a little bit like up for negotiation. Now you add another guy to the mix, and Jonnu Smith, who obviously has a long-standing good rapport with offensive coordinator Arthur Smith. But there's also Pat Freiermuth. What's going on here in Pittsburgh?
Probably nothing good, John. I think this is looking bad for the Steelers, just especially for Mike Tomlin. I'm a big Mike Tomlin fan. I think he might be the best coach in the NFL. But the Steelers are kind of putting their culture at hazard with the Aaron Rodgers thing, and I don't know, maybe Fitzpatrick wasn't as good as he used to be. I don't know, but it feels like getting rid of him, maybe not getting this TJ Watt situation under control. We're at risk of seeing the Steelers culture decline. And like, that's what's always made them so immovable, like over 40 years or whatever. They were pretty much the same product year to year with just some fluctuation based on the quarterback at the time. This is kind of like potentially like a soul selling route that they're going that could like with the Jets. There was no reason on paper that they should have been so bad last year, and
Right.
what happened. And not to assume Rodgers is all to blame for that. Not to assume Tomlin can't maybe keep it together. Like as much as I just said, he's going to have a losing season this year. I still wouldn't want to bet that specific. That's not my top bet of the year. Exactly. I don't really want to fade Tomlin that hard, but I'm worried about generalized dysfunction throughout the Steelers offense. I think the tight end situation is just bad for fantasy purposes. I guess you could say it's good for them, but I kind of have trouble believing Darnell Washington was the problem with the offense. Freiermuth is very good, and I think Jonnu Smith's better, but Freiermuth is very good too. So you can't just at the very least, you got to find some way to get those guys both over 700 snaps, but in the process, you're pretty much benching Washington permanently. So I question the direction. It's a bummer for Jonnu Smith, definitely, because I think his numbers last year were real. I think he is that good of a receiver, but with the Steelers, there's just no real potential to show that.
No, it's are they just going to run two tight end as their base at this point?
They kind
you think?
of need to if they're not. And if they were moving Freiermuth, I could kind of get it in terms of budgeting the playing time, but I don't know why you would try to look for a reason to get rid of a guy like Freiermuth. So if you're going to keep Freiermuth and you're going to acquire Jonnu Smith, you have to try to get those guys to like 1,500 combined snaps, which is easier said than done in general. But specifically, the Steelers' defense would need to be just lights out good to keep that sort of game script viable.
And do you think that that's still like, do the Steelers still really have that? I mean, the defense, you could argue, was the thing that sort of let them down the stretch last year.
Like I think like the Harmon pick was great. I love their 3 down linemen. That's a Hayward, Benton, and those guys are really good. But if you don't have TJ Watt, like Alex Highsmith, I think in 2 of the last 3 years, he's come out at like a 6.5 sack pace for 16 games, and then he had that one crazy year, looking a bit like an aberration. So I imagine if they were to move Watt, basically because of this contract issues, like Watt wants to be paid quite a bit and is taking a more kind of resolute stance than he was the last round of negotiations with the team, the last contract, I should say. So if the Watt thing goes badly, again, then that's hurting the defense in a way that they haven't really been stung in a while. I think Herbig could be quite good, but Highsmith, I think they're spending too much money on there.
Yeah, that could be a bit of like an albatross of a contract. And flipping it back to the offense here just momentarily. So last year, according to Sumer Sports, the Steelers ran 12 personnel 25% of the time. That ranked 12th in the league. The Raiders were tops at 35%. So, we could see this creep up to at least a third of the time, I think, as far as that them running that type of personnel. I think they should be able to run the ball well, but I'm dubious on Rodgers. I'm dubious on just like the personnel all working together in a cohesive way for the passing game to really be much more than, okay, DK Metcalf, the deep shot landed or it didn't. And that's just sort of where I land with it. And of course, like for fantasy purposes, for the tight ends specifically, like I don't know I mean, if you were drafting Jonnu Smith in like the 9th round or wherever he was going before, I mean, that those days are long gone, and you're upset that you're holding those tickets.
Yeah, so I will say I think there is a completely viable potential way to take the personnel that we, Freiermuth, Jonnu base offense. There is a way to make that good. I just have no faith at all that Arthur Smith is capable of conceiving it. So I'm definitely pessimistic, or at least like more pessimistic on the Steelers than I've been in a long time. And like maybe I'm having a short-term memory. Like maybe the Kenny Pickett days were darker in a way that I'm kind of like taking for granted now. But the vibes are just horrific at the moment, in my opinion. Especially if the Watt thing doesn't get resolved, it's like crisis point.
Yeah, no. So that obviously becomes like the big focus here over these next few weeks, whether the Watt deal gets worked out. I don't know, who could realistically at this stage of the offseason, take on that type of contract, but we shall see. Let's see. Before we get on over to our next group of tight ends to unpack, we do have a message from our friends over at Circa. Circa Million and Circa Survivor are back with a massive $21 million in guaranteed prizes. Circa Million, you just pick 5 games against the spread each week, 18 weeks of action with 126 ways to win, $1 million for the winner and $6 million guaranteed. And Circa Survivor, 1 pick a week, no point spread, lasts the longest to win it all. At least $15 million are guaranteed. And that one, you got to enter in Nevada, but you can play from anywhere. $21 million guaranteed. Visit circasports.com for more details. And of course, if you're following along on the live stream or on audio form, we are running a special that runs through July 7th. You can get 25% off of any RotoWire subscription. You just go to rotowire.com, use that code PURPLE. Again, that's code PURPLE for 25% off any subscription. Jump on that now because it only runs through Monday, July 7th. All right, onward, Mario. So you just wrote up an article. You've had a long ongoing series looking at some of the job battles that we're going to be keeping a close eye on during training camp. Let's start things off in Chicago. So this one is sort of akin to the Steelers one, where you have 2 legit tight ends. You have a well-established one in Cole Kmet, as you did with Pat Freiermuth, and then you add in, another, intriguing weapon, Jonnu Smith, of course, the veteran version of that, the established version of that in Pittsburgh, and Colston Loveland, a top 10 pick in this year's draft. So, with the Bears, I think that they have the issue, unlike the Steelers, where they are really, really kind of chock full at receiver on top of this all. That they're very much invested in DJ Moore. They're very invested in Rome Odunze. They took in the first round last year. They just took Luther Burden as well. So that's too many guys right now to be on the field at once. So like, how is Ben Johnson going to kind of establish this balancing act that he has to kind of make everything work? And what's the ideal loadout here in Chicago, especially when it comes to the tight end?
Well, you draft Loveland 10th overall only if you're going to, at some point soon, make him your leading target or second leading target. There's no scenario, in my opinion, where Loveland at his peak is the third or worse target in the offense. Like, based on the way he drew targets at Michigan, there's reason to suspect that Colston Loveland has pretty clear 100 catch upside at the NFL level. Just because he draws targets at an unusual rate, in a not just above average. It's like one of the highest rates you'll see in general. So that's an eventual outcome that I consider pretty much certain. But the short term and the time between now and then, I don't really know what to make of. I don't know what a fair expectation is for Loveland. Just, I guess, as a rookie in general, and especially with a guy like Kmet there. Like, Kmet has played more tight end snaps in at least the 3 and maybe the 4 last years than any tight end in the NFL. So he's at worst an average NFL starter, and he might be an above average NFL starter. Kmet is good at pretty much anything you have a tight end do. So with that said, Kmet is definitely the more capable and like correctly allocated blocker between himself and Loveland. So if there's a blocking task between the two, Kmet gets it. That's totally simple. But complicating things too is the shoulder, the AC joint. I think
Yes.
surgically repaired with Loveland. It's not a long-term concern, but we don't know for sure what kind of workload he's going to get at the start of training camp, and if he is limited at all. That, again, as a rookie, and with Cole Kmet being the other guy, having a shoulder thing in training camp hold you back is, I think, an easy way to imagine Loveland starting slow. And he could still, and I guess you would sort of expect that he would finish strong, but sometimes the slow start is a little difficult to manage, especially in redraft.
Yeah, redraft, that is something that I think is going to be something that probably steers me away from him. But if the ADP keeps going down in best ball, again, especially with rookies, like you want that finishing flourish, and
Yeah.
you hope that Loveland, by the time like November rolls around, it is fully integrated into this offense, fully healthy, and starting to develop his rapport with Caleb Williams. So his stock, understandably, I think people are nervous about the shoulder and everything. It's trending down. We have the dreaded red down arrow next to his name on our ADP page. He's down to 132.6 is his ADP right now. So that kind of puts him in a cluster of tight ends that we've talked about, probably on the lower end of that.
Sorry, John, is that later than a guy like Njoku at this point?
It should be. I will.
Okay.
Get
I think
right
that
on
might have. I think that might be a relatively recent development then. So I hadn't been targeting Loveland. In fact, Loveland, I think I only picked previously when I kind of had my plan go wrong at tight end. Like, it was just kind of like, oh crap. I really thought whatever Evan Ingram was going to make it, and he didn't. But I definitely think the strong finish is at least possible, and maybe even likely with Loveland. I think even on as little as 45 snaps in a game, he can project for upwards of like 7 or 8 targets. So I know it's a little aggressive, but if you can somehow get, maybe I should try something like Ingram and Loveland, with consecutive picks, because maybe Ingram can cover me for the first half, and Loveland can give some reinforcement at the second.
And your intuition was correct, as per usual. So Loveland's slide has coincided with both both Tucker Kraft and David Njoku creeping up
Kraft.
just a bit. Kraft at 130, Njoku at 125, and Jonnu Smith is down to 124.
Yeah,
already.
He can go to like 190. I don't know. I can't draft him again.
No.
I'm not that overexposed with Jonnu, but it's like that's like tight end 3 situation at best.
Yeah, I fear that is the case, and if people drafted before Monday or Tuesday, you were drafting him probably as your tight end 1. So that those teams going to be fighting a bit of an uphill battle at the position. Hopefully, your dart throws later on in the draft end up panning out. As far as Kmet, are you even considering drafting him in best ball? Kind of the downside scenario for Loveland, where he never fully gets on track, slow start, kind of snowballs. It ends up being kind of a lost rookie season. You can get Freiermuth with one of Kmet with one of your very last picks.
Yeah, it's something to consider, especially if you're committed to taking a third tight end, and if you're already over 30% on whatever your preferred tight end 3 normally is. Kmet is, if nothing else, a good player, and he could play. He's not going to play as many snaps as he has the last 4 years, but he still could play 750 snaps. And if Caleb takes a step forward, then if Ben Johnson turns out to be the real deal, maybe Kmet could kind of luck into some touchdowns. It's not inconceivable to me, but I don't think you're not going to get more than like 5 targets in a game from Kmet in any game that Loveland is active. And so you need some like big plays. You need some touchdowns. 18th round, maybe the risk is priced in, appropriately, but I probably won't be targeting Kmet. He's more like in dynasty. Maybe you can stash him for free on your situational, inactive, like this put this guy on ice for a year. And if he's out of the Bears next year, he could be back to 900 snap player for someone else.
Yeah, I don't think that he's long for Chicago. I don't think that makes sense for their roster build right now. But for this year, it certainly creates a bit of a squeeze as far as how to project these tight ends for fantasy. Let's go on over to our next one. This one is tricky because it's 3-headed, and none of these guys are either all that exciting or proven. And in the case of Oronde Gadsden, that of course is the Los Angeles Chargers. So you got Will Dissly, bring in Tyler Conklin this year, and then of course you draft Oronde Gadsden late. Gadsden, a guy who at Syracuse, before last year when their offense looked more like a real offense, he was it as far as their passing game was concerned, and he didn't look like a tight end. It was almost like he was a cheat code. And if you played season-long college fantasy football, because he was racking up elite receiver numbers prior to last season, but then things got a little bit different. His draft stock slides a little bit. He doesn't project as he doesn't have that conventional tight end body, but I think he's really good athlete. The eye test is certainly one that is passed by Gadsden, but how does it fit in with this tight end group and with the Chargers generally?
Sorry, I need to ask this, but do you know what his injury was his junior year at Syracuse?
Oh boy, I want to say shoulder, but I'm not positive.
I'm trying to find it. I swear I'm not just laying around begging for you to Google it. I'm closing it. Maybe it doesn't matter. I'll keep scrolling and it's a foot, I think, right?
Okay.
So I guess that's a little, a bit of a bummer thing worth keeping an eye on for the long term, maybe. But seems like he's over it, and certainly production-wise, he was over it last year because he got right back to the very high level of production that he had his true sophomore year. So yeah, that's pretty impressive. Even by receiver standards, it's pretty impressive for Gadsden to be pushing for 1,000 yards in 13 games as a true sophomore, and I'm assuming his efficiency numbers were over the team baseline while carrying about a third of the passing game. So tight end or receiver, either way you look at it, that's a really strong positive indicator, and that's pretty much the level he was back to in 2024. So I don't know enough about blocking, honestly, tight end blocking fundamentals and technique or whatever. Some people like Lance Zierlein, if I remember correctly, his NFL.com player profile for Oronde Gadsden kind of made him sound like a completely non-viable blocker. But I don't know if that's just because Zierlein's biased toward a certain school of tight end scouting that's like all tight ends must be in line. You can only have I don't know, you can only have like the boring 260. You can only have Bubba Franks or something like that, and anything other than that is a false tight end and like underhanded or something. But if Gadsden's blocking is okay, or if the Chargers whatever don't care in the end if he's a bad blocker, maybe because he turns out to be so compelling as a receiver, that I think weirder things have happened for sure. Then it's possible that Gadsden kind of just gets into a situation like a cushy usage setup, kind of like he had at Syracuse, where, maybe he's just a big slot, but that was what Marquez Colston was. So it's not like a completely unprecedented idea. And if he's getting inline reps, if Gadsden just turns out to be so good as a receiver that the Chargers are like, we got to get him inline reps too. And if he's getting inline routes, that would be, he could end up being like not this year, I don't think, but like within the next 3 years, he could be something like a top 5 fantasy tight end. So the playing time is the crucial thing. It's like, will his blocking or whatever else be such a hindrance that the Chargers don't give him that snap count? But I don't know. But if they give him the snap count, the targets will happen.
I'm dubious on that. And as much as I love Harbaugh, I don't trust this offense to like really work Gadsden in and get it right this
They're
year.
saying the right things about him so far, for what it's worth. Like I don't remember the specifics, but Roman and maybe somebody else were saying like, yeah, he's doing a really good job so far, and something pretty. It was optimistic. It was favorable sounding, whatever it was.
So does it change the way that they run their personnel? I hate to be like a overly reliant on personnel, but discussion, but like the outliers are always interesting. And the Chargers did rank dead last in 12 personnel usage at just under 6% last year. So does that inherently have to change with Gadsden and Conklin coming in?
I'm sorry. That's saying the Chargers ran 2 tight end at the league's lowest rate.
Correct.
I'm not sure that could be true. Well, anyway, they were planning to give, I think, maybe more tight end reps yet than they did. Like I think they were counting on Hayden Hurst. What's his name? I think they were counting on him to be like the pass catching tight end, and they wanted Will Dissly to be the bruiser blocker guy who deals with all the trash from the inline spot. But Hurst was a 0. And then they kind of just they were just like, Will Dissly, you're actually the pass catcher guy now because we don't have anyone else. Because the only other guy we have is Tucker Fisk or whatever, the 300-pound defensive tackle who's just a tight end now. So yeah, that's and Stone Smart, who I kind of, I don't know, I'm not convinced he's very good. They were giving a decent number of reps to a guy like Smart, even though he is pretty much a false tight end. Like he was a quarterback as recently as like 3 years ago or whatever, or 4 years ago. So I think the Chargers would prefer to use more tight ends than they did last year. And I think this year they have the personnel to do it. Having Conklin, having Gadsden, Dissly can be that more designated bruiser guy now. I don't think Dissly's getting targets at nearly the rate that he did last year. I think Conklin takes most of those, but Conklin can also work from the inline spot, so they have some depth there. I think that the defensive tackle guy is going to play another like 250 snaps because they must lead the league. Them and the Steelers, I guess, it must lead the league in 3 tight end because they definitely pulled that a decent amount last year. But it's Conklin or it's Gadsden, I think, in fantasy. It's one of those two who does something useful this year. I think Conklin's pretty good, but I don't know what a fair expectation is for him. Dissly's still going to play a lot because Dissly's good. So Gadsden's almost like the one of the group that's worth the trouble because he at least has some potential way for upside. I guess Conklin could too, but it's just not as easy to imagine. And not to be grim, but Ladd McConkey has a pretty nasty injury history.
Yep.
Maybe he improves with that. I remember seeing something about how he was trying to learn how to fall better or something like
Worked
that.
for Tua.
Yeah, it's gonna go great, I'm sure. I mean, I hope it does. I think McConkey's really, really good, but he was leaving the field like every 6 snaps last year with something or another. And
yeah,
if the slot rep opens up, it really might be Gadsden who's their best second option.
And all right, so that to me is interesting. I don't know if I have the sand to take him in best ball, at least right now.
I don't either. I mean, if I do enough drafts, I get a Herbert roster going, maybe I'll do it. But you have to understand Gadsden as a no floor, kind of fantasy
possible
asset.
zero
for a redraft, especially for best ball, especially no floor, high ceiling, and you're just assured nothing at all.
So maybe, so much of like my brain works in best ball terms, but he's someone where like in redraft, like if he does kind of get himself onto the radar, like I will have very little stopping me from like, putting in waiver claims, putting in fab bids to pick up Gadsden. It's just, I need to know a little bit more concretely that he, has a role to use, because once he's in there, I am confident in his ability. It's just a lot of roadblocks to me right now, but keep him on like the fab speed dial, as we call it. And also another point to your intuition, Mario, you were right. The Steelers led the league in 3 tight end sets last year at 15%. So
cool. Way to go, guys.
Very good.
I get those Michael Pruitt reps.
You got to. All right. So that wraps up our tight end discussion. Before we get on to a little Scott Fishbowl update, we do have a message from our friends over at Fantrax. Is there something you wish your fantasy league had or features that are missing from your current leagues? Bonus scoring, custom schedules or playoffs, deeper team settings? Well, look no further, because we have you covered with our friends at Fantrax. Fantrax is the most customizable fantasy platform in the industry, offering the greatest fantasy experience for your dynasty, keeper, redraft, and best ball leagues. Fantrax even offers college fantasy leagues, and I can attest to that. I participated not only in the regular Scott Fish Bowl, but the first ever Tadpole Bowl, which is hosted over on Fantrax, which is a college fantasy league with an overall component under the Fishbowl umbrella. We are flying in that one by comparison. I think we're in like the 17th round of that, drafted with some other college fantasy football legends, Jared Palmgren, Eric Froton, Chris K. Really great to draft with those guys. And Fantrax has been awesome with that. Create or join a fantasy football commissioner league. Invite your friends and dominate your draft this season. Fantrax is the top dynasty fantasy football platform in the industry. Fantrax is running a special promotion that you do not want to miss. Sign up for free at fantrax.com/rotowire today to enter for your chance to win a signed Jamar Chase jersey. Simply create a new league or bring over your existing leagues for more chances to win. Simply go to fantrax.com/rotowire and sign up today. Fantrax, the home of fantasy sports. All right, quick check-in here, Mario. Fishbowl drafts have gotten rolling across the country. I believe a couple of our guys did the one in Madison over the weekend, and I was able to participate in the one here in Atlanta. Really good time. I think that's like my 3rd live draft here in Atlanta. I did the DC one last year. I got the board pulled up here, as you guys can see if you're following along on the live stream. But just to give everyone a bit of like a quick primer on what's new, what's different with the Fishbowl scoring this year. There's always something unique going on. Last year, the kick returners were all the rage. Shout out Cavante Turpin, by the way, really helped me out in that one. Although my Keelan Robinson Galaxy Brain pick did not work out.
Bulkied.
I got bulky, dude. It sucked. But this year, kind of an interesting bent to it. Basically, like positions are flattened. You can still do super flex. You can still have two quarterbacks. However, as you can see on the board, or if I can just clue you in with the color coding, red is quarterback. And in years past, with the super flex detail, if you're leaving the third round without a second quarterback, you are likely behind the pace of the rest of the room. But that is not the case this year. The elite guys still go early in this particular format. You know, there's still good scoring for quarterbacks. But once you get Lamar, Jaden Daniels, Josh Allen, and Jalen Hurts and Joe Burrow off the board, then we start to see runs at other positions. And additionally to that, as to why quarterback isn't quite as premium as in years past, you get a half point per carry, you get a point for first down, you get 2.5 points per reception, and another point tacked on if it's a tight end. So tight end premium is the deal here. And it turns out I've looked around at other fishbowl drafts thus far, and apparently I was lucky to get one Brock Bowers where I picked in the first round with the 9th overall selection.
Nice, yeah. And John, sorry if you already said this. Is your format the one where it was 2.5 points per reception or 1?
It's 2.5.
2.5. So yeah, the tight end version of that scoring in particular really can kind of create some absurd scoring scenarios for a guy like Bowers or Trey McBride, because if they catch 10 passes, which they can do and will do again probably, 10 catches, 10 first downs, 3.5 points, it's something that can get a little wacky almost in a hurry. So interesting to get Bowers there. Yeah. And I'm surprised. I'm almost surprised that McBride didn't go like right after, just because 100 catches of this sort, 110 catches of this sort is a pretty easy way to pile up some points.
It is. And then I think that workhorse running backs are also extremely important in this format. So I took Derrick Henry, who I think, if all goes well, I think can be a 300 carry guy. So that's 150 points just for playing right there. So that's not even like counting his yards, first downs, touchdowns, things like that. I know he's not a big pass catcher, of course, but Bucky Irving is, or I think he can be. And so I took him in the third. This was a third round reversal. So for those unfamiliar, the draft order kind of reverses on itself in the third round, as the label might indicate. So if you had the 9th pick in the first round, you get the 4th pick in the second and the third rounds as a result. And I took Irving there, and then I went senior circuit for my receivers. Devontae Adams, I think, is going to have a big target year. I think he still has like one more monster year in him. Mike Evans, going to be a little bit more touchdown dependent from him, I would think, but still, you feel pretty safe about the floor there. I grabbed Trevor Lawrence. I grabbed Zay Flowers in the 7th. I think he's someone that, even if it's not like a super high volume passing attack, Flowers, I think, has claimed to about 25% of the targets there in Baltimore. So that sets up well. Travis Etienne and Brandon Ayuk are my picks thus far as we finish up the 9th round.
Nice. It seems maybe safe to say that wide receiver is the position that maybe gets pinched a little bit value-wise. Tight end, quarterback being strong as they are, running backs being as important as they are. I think you got really good receiver values for as late as you got them, and I think I might, if anything, I guess you got to get another quarterback, but I'd keep going at tight end a little bit too, because like the most recent one was Tyler Warren taken. So yeah, a guy like Loveland or something in this scoring system, it's like in November and later, I think he could have a 8-10 catch game or two. So there's maybe some more upside you can get specifically through the tight end if there's guys who project for targets.
Yes. So tight end is going to be a priority. I think quarterback and tight end will probably be my next 2 picks. I don't know if any of my league mates are listening, but I'll probably be hoping that a quarterback run doesn't formulate in the next like 7 or 8 selections, so I can get someone like a Cam Ward or a Geno to pair up with Bowers, and then a tight end. And stop me if you've heard this one before, but if Likely's available, I will probably be
always
interested in grabbing him as well. But that's the update as far as the Scott Fishbowl goes from the Atlanta Live. Lots of fun tools out there to check out, and you can kind of compare and contrast how your league is shaping up versus the others, what the conventional wisdom is, whether you want to follow that or not. I feel like the beauty of this is there's always like everyone thinks like, oh, you have to build your roster this way, but really almost any way will suffice if you pull it off correctly. But I do think that your general points that tight end and running and workhorse running backs very important to get, especially early.
Yeah, play the market in your draft as always, because when certain positional runs occur, the value calculus can shift really all of a sudden too. So no need to make your plan ahead of time. Just stay on your toes and take the bounties that are left after people go chasing different positions, like stay at the lead of the positional runs.
Yeah. So some people those runs will happen, and inherently, like you'll get some value coming back on the other side. I feel strongly about that when it came to Devontae Adams, although I was definitely coveting going into that round, possibly wishful thinking for Jackson Smith and Jigba or Harrison. I feel like both of those guys project really well.
I feel like all the ones who went just before, I think Tyreek could go
especially
crazy
now
this year. So if you had Tyreek, I would just kind of declare you the league winner already. You still have a shot, but I think you gotta grind a little more yet before we invest.
Yeah, it could have been done and dusted after just 4 rounds, and our poor guy picking on the end. I think my guy Keith, before the news broke, of course, grabbed Jonnu Smith in the 6th round. So that stings just a bit for him. Before we get on over to the Carolina Panthers, we do have one more message here for you guys from the NFFC. The NFFC RotoWire Fantasy Football Online Championship is live. Play fantasy football against your favorite RotoWire experts on NFFC this season. Jeff Erickson, Nick Whalen, and more will be competing in the RotoWire NFFC Online Championship with a shot at $250,000. Sign up for a draft today at rotowire.com/high stakes. That's rotowire.com/high stakes. Love playing over at the NFFC. I gotta like build up my confidence and dial things in a little bit more before I'm ready to
you
jump
need
in
your
on the
training
NFFC.
montage immediately before the draft. Yeah, you can't let time pass between the montage ending and your draft. You have to go right into it.
Yeah, it's going to look a lot like if you've seen the film Roadhouse, where Patrick Swayze's in the barn, like punching posts until his knuckles are bloody and doing roundhouse kicks and Tai Chi. That's what my montage will look like ideally. And at that point, once I'm finished, I'm going to be ready to
wear a cover for your hands so you're not so bloody.
Oh, he's got like the gauze on it, but he's such a boss that he just still bleeding through it.
We'll make sure to disinfect that. It can get infected.
That's true. And then I got to defeat the Brad Wesley that is taking down the $250K overall prize. All right, enough Roadhouse for this episode, at the very least. So last month or so, if you've been listening along with us, we've been doing these kind of like deep isolation series into different offenses that we're curious about going into this year. So next stop for us is going to be the Carolina Panthers. I think that there's a couple of schools of thought that exist with the Panthers. You either believe what you saw with the last month or so of the season last year. I think that their game against the Chiefs, where they kind of hung tough with them, and against the Eagles as well, are kind of like inflection points where it's like, wow, Carolina might not be that bad anymore. They're not like number one with a bullet, the worst team in football. So they end with that flourish, but is it sustainable? Do you believe in it going into this year? I think it is the big question when it comes to the Carolina Panthers. So, Bryce Young showed some signs of life. We got year 2 in the system under Canales. What's kind of like your general vibe here with this Panthers team?
I think they've kind of stabilized the situation. It was a rough start for Canales last year, and to his credit, it was a situation that was bad enough at the time that it would have been easy for Canales to let it kind of like get out of control and the whole season just, tailspin from there. But he took that difficult situation and found a way to work through it a little bit, kind of got them to the point where they were at least standing upright again. And no one was going to mistake that second half team even for a particularly good one. This is the worst division in football, almost certainly, and they're still pretty much getting whooped most weeks. But they had a little fight in them at least, which it was a meaningful change. I don't mean to make it sound like backhanded, but they kind of just had no signs of life at one point, and then that definitely changed. And I think you can see Canales figuring it out a little bit. I do think while they're not good exactly, they are still kind of stabilized at least. And they're a team you have to at least take seriously. Like, you have to game plan for them sufficiently, and you have to show up on game day. The Panthers, before this phase, you could have just kind of goofed off all week and still beaten them. So that's changing at least. The offensive line should be legitimately strong. At least as a run blocking group, they should be strong. And I think Canales is committed, not just out of like a random attack, not because he just like developed an attachment to the run game last year, as searching for something good to happen, finding Hubbard, sticking with it just because he didn't want to mess with it. I don't think that's what happened. I think Canales has an actual understanding about the function of the run game, what it dictates to a defense, the kind of possibilities it affords to the offense. And I'm optimistic that Canales will keep it working. I don't think he's unprepared to adjust in various ways. And I think with an offensive line like this, if you stick with the power run game, it is going to tenderize the defense, pretty much any defense. And so they're well stocked with runners. I don't know if they're going to keep a fourth one this year. But even with Jonathan Brooks out, they're well stocked. There's Hubbard, there's Dowdle, Trevor Etienne, I think is going to be a useful player if they need to go to him. And then the receivers, they're kind of good, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, there's at least a lot of potential at multiple spots that didn't exist previously. And I'm a little concerned about McMillan, Tetairoa McMillan. The workout numbers were not great, but I think particularly with a recent case study like T. Higgins, you can kind of see why you'd of course prefer that McMillan be like a 4.45 or whatever kind of runner. You can see why you don't need to be that with his kind of build, with his kind of game, to still be really productive in the NFL. Pretty much just, T. Higgins had like the high 4.5 or 4.6, something like that. It hasn't mattered at all. He's just been monstrously productive on a per snap basis his whole time in the NFL. And in the hindsight with Higgins' case, it's like, well, yeah, that's just how he produced at Clemson too. It's like, you don't want to lose sight of like the actual effect on the game that the player has. And McMillan was definitely in that category where it was like the defense was gunning for him, and he still made a lot of plays that and not many receivers can make. So Canales, I think, will find some balance. I'm assuming it's going to be McMillan at the X spot or whatever. Thielen mostly in the slot, Legette at the flanker or whatever. But between Thielen and Legette and then Jalen Coker, it's not actually set in stone, really. Like the top three being McMillan, Thielen, Legette is kind of what I'd assume. But Coker, I think he's kind of like cross training as the backup between both Thielen and Legette. And so if Thielen gets hurt or if Legette gets hurt, Coker's just right up. And if either of those guys struggles, I think Coker could kind of get his foot in the door too.
So I actually took Coker in our staff dynasty league. Was surprised that no one had kind of stashed him.
He could be good. Yeah.
I took him, at a point in the draft where this is an established one. This isn't a startup. So we were just doing like a rookie / unclaimed veteran type of draft. And I think like I was out of rookies that I felt were worth it. And I think it was like the fourth round of that. So I took the plunge on Jalen Coker. I think I was impressed enough by what he put on tape last year to where I was willing to invest a little bit. As far as like one of the things that we like to do when we're doing these team deep dives is just kind of like looking at the shape of the ADP and like the story that the market is kind of telling itself. Tet McMillan is a guy who goes in the mid fourth right now, just inside the top 40. You're looking at Chuba Hubbard trending down a little bit if you're following along on the live stream, but he's at pick 53. And then you have a pretty sizable drop until you get to the next bucket of guys, whether it's Xavier, Legette, or Bryce Young or Adam Thielen. All those guys go in a pretty close range of each other. Within 17 picks is Legette, Young, and Thielen. And then you get into like the backup running backs like Rico Dowdle, and then last round picks in Jatavian Sanders and Jalen Coker.
Yeah, as much as I agree that Coker's quite interesting. Not getting my hopes up too high in Dynasty, but I think you can feel like there's something there. Like that's a definite non-zero. But I did not mean to skip Thielen exactly, or Legette. I mean, Legette's so toolsy. I guess I don't know if you can really count him out. Like guys like him, maybe the switch goes on all of a sudden. But in the meantime, Thielen was really, really productive last year, and he was the year before that too. So maybe Thielen can't play on the boundary anymore. Maybe he's only slot viable. But even with age 35 coming up, I don't know if it's safe to count him out either. Like he was not just pretty good last year, like he was really one of the more productive per snap, per target type receivers. He just was limited to 408 snaps due to injury.
Right. Like, wasn't there a point early on in the year where he was like a top 10 receiver, like overall, something like that?
It was more late in the year that in the 2024 case, but I think 2023, you're right. It was a fast start, slow finish that right. year. Well, it was particularly bad quarterback play in 2023 for what it's worth. So in both 2023 and 2024, those samples for Thielen are just really, really good. Like no indication of decline. And there doesn't always get to be, fair warning about a decline like this, especially at 35. He could just be running a 4.8 all of a sudden, and then he's toast at that point. But at the end, as of the end of last year, Thielen was pretty much one of the better slot receivers in the NFL.
Yeah, so when he signed with Carolina a couple years ago, it's like, oh no, this is what going out sad looks like.
I thought he was over, and he just kept going.
Yeah, I mean it's been awesome. So I'm hoping that he's able to stay as healthy as he can this year, because I think there's definitely still something in the tank when he is available. Let's get some thumbs up, thumbs down on the top two guys from this Carolina offense. So McMillan, again, a mid fourth, and Chuba Hubbard, like a mid fifth. Are you investing in either of those at cost?
I am not picking McMillan at that price. I think so. I'm not going to say he's like a bad pick exactly, even though I'm not picking him, because I think there's a chance that McMillan is really, really good. And if he is in that certain category of receiver talent where he just kind of surprises us and is already one of the 15 or 12 best receivers in the NFL, then on a team like that, there could be a big fish, small pond kind of dynamic in a hurry. So there is a sort of narrow path to upside with McMillan if his talent basically proves to be close to that blue chip kind of mark. But I'm worried between him being a rookie, the Panthers having qualified alternatives, and not knowing if the Panthers want to throw the ball. I mean, they don't want to throw the ball, I don't think. They prefer that their defense be good and that they can just run the ball all day, because that's just kind of the easiest way to win a game if you have the option. How much they have that option, I don't know. But if McMillan gets, if Bryce Young throws 22, 23 touchdowns, I guess McMillan could have a good route to 10 of those or something like that, especially because he's such a good jump ball threat from the perimeter, which is where Young, coming out of college, had the best. That was the closest thing to a trump card that he had, right? Like that was the boundary fade type look. He had the really good timing, the really good placement, and the fact that he had poor throwing velocity didn't really matter, because you're just throwing it away from the defense and the receiver's just snagging it. So McMillan is definitely good at that type of setup. I just prefer to get some running backs and probably most other receivers in this range too.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly, when I was writing up like the fantasy recap from the first round, I took a look at Bryce Young's like next gen stats and where he graded by area of the field, and I kind of deduced that where McMillan is going to be running is actually where Young is the most proficient. So that links up nicely with your argument there. So that could be, or that's something to consider. I think I'm underweight on McMillan right now. I definitely think that there's enough talent and upside to where he could hit value, and I've just mostly like you said, been targeting other players, like probably taking Lamar Jackson. So like a different type of build there, or I'm taking DK Metcalf over McMillan, that type of thing also.
Yeah, that's probably the line for me at least too. Like I'm definitely not taking McMillan over Metcalf. So you can get Metcalf for now later. That's kind of a no-brainer to me. But yeah, not to skip Hubbard exactly. I think I'm underweight on him, but it's not because I'm specifically avoiding him. It's more I'd have to look to know for certain, but I might get some Hubbard shares soon. Apparently his price isn't going to get much lower. I would prefer that it were lower, and if it were, I'd definitely be interested in that case. But the likely reality with Hubbard is he's not going to do a whole lot for you as a pass catcher. Like he might play a lot of passing down snaps, but that's just because the Panthers like him in blitz pickup. The targets that Hubbard gets are barely even viable. It's a lot of like the play went really wrong type targets, and now you're just kind of getting the hot potato. That's not where you get the receiving production from. So while there's a good reason to think Hubbard can get you to that sort of that like 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns as a runner sort of thresholds, I think he can do that, and I think they got the right offensive line to do it. But he has to fumble less, and touchdown production stuff can be fickle. It could be like a situation where Hubbard's having a really good year, getting them into scoring range, and 4 of last year's touchdowns that went to Hubbard go to McMillan instead. So like that kind of thing makes me leery of Hubbard. Like I'm only going to take him a little bit as far as I can tell right now.
I just don't find myself shopping in that aisle very, very often as far as like running backs in that range go. So you have Hubbard, you have Ken Walker, Joe Mixon, and Alvin Kamara all going within 5 picks of each other, and I just don't really have a lot.
This. Yeah, honestly, it's probably Kamara for me if among those running backs, but I maybe I'm just going way past ADP. Not DME Brown. It's a little too early for that, but maybe I'm just reaching for somebody else there when I'm in that situation.
Yeah. So I just, if nothing else, like I'm very
Laporta,
rarely
what I'm doing. Maybe that's who I'm taking there. I don't know.
That sounds right. But yeah, regardless, like I'm taking Ridley there a little bit too.
Ridley, yes, I prefer Ridley too.
Because I'm just not getting a ton of running backs from that particular bucket. And then like I said, about 100 picks until your next Panther is within your realm of possibility with Xavier Legette and Bryce Young. I know that you and Bryce tricky history. Are you buying in a little bit this year?
Not really, not for fantasy purposes anyway. I think a reasonable success goal for Bryce Young to set this year would be more just running like a really clean off, like an Alex Smith kind of offense, not that he needs to settle with that for the long term, not that he can't have ambitions of airing it out again, but you got to build your game up a little bit. You got to identify and work out the safety areas, and I think for him the first step is like a run heavy offense with some well designed play action shots for some timely big plays. Hopefully McMillan increasing that touchdown count single-handedly, and that's totally possible. I mean, that's a type of throw that Young just was not allowed to make to this point, and now he might. So the touchdown count, getting that to something like 24 or 25 or more, while cleaning up the completion percentage, the yards per attempt, the sacks, the interceptions, that's, I think, the more fair goal for him this year, especially because as much as there's all these things we have hope for in the Carolina offense around him, both the offensive line and the pass catchers, they're still rebuilding and they're still developing. So they can't get too ambitious right now, in my opinion. And I think that's why, particularly with the offensive line's run blocking strengths, particularly with Hubbard, Dowdle, ETN there, they're going to lean a lot on that running game, and they're prepared to kind of like sit on the ball until they really need to get points.
And defensively, do they have like the kind of setup there to where they can play kind of safe on offense and trust the defense?
There's potential there, but they sort of have, at best, a bunch of guys who might be good. And if they do turn out to be good, it could be to a pretty significant consequence. But right now, their most established edge rushers are DJ Wanham, who's a very like 50 grade at most type, and Patrick Jones, who I think is cool. I think he might be actually really good, but I can't really understand his NFL stats. They just look insane. If Patrick Jones kind of takes another step forward, if Nick Scorton, who they took in the second round, if he can hit the ground running, they can have a real pass rush for the first time in years. Like I think Tershawn Wharton, who they signed in free agency, he's a good interior, like one gap kind of defensive lineman who can create some pressure. Bobby Brown, they signed from the Rams. He's a two gap guy. So they got Bobby Brown, Derek Brown. That duo should be able to hold a lot of ground for the defense. And if that edge rush can get going, then they really might take a big step forward. They didn't like. Do they still have a Giro Aviro?
I think, is he in Denver now?
No, he was like the interim or whatever with Denver, and he's now the defensive coordinator with the Panthers. I still think Ejiro Evero is a really good coach, and I know people would think that's a crazy thing to say given how bad the Panthers defense has been, but don't be surprised if the defense does just all of a sudden surprise people, because Ejiro Evero is good, but they had like sub CFL talent at some points. Like it was ridiculous how bad the personnel was, and they at least made some attempts to patch it all up in the offseason, adding a guy like Jones. I think Jones might be able to help them. John, I'm not going to try to say the guy's last name, but the edge rusher, Princely, Mississippi guy.
Yeah. Oh boy.
He's
I know
another
him
one
well.
who's he's really athletic. He could be a capable third edge rusher. So the secondary just looks like garbage to me. Not much I can say for the second. I guess maybe Lathan Ransom will turn out to be sick. Maybe Morrig can help out a little bit, but that corner rotation looks pretty awful to me. So that's the limitation. If they end up in a shootout script, this defense of the Panthers is definitely giving up yardage. Like the only hope they have, I think, is like maybe getting out of some of those jams with turnovers, but they can't cover really aside from Horn maybe.
Okay, so that is a bit of a problem. So tying it all
another
back
reason they're
together,
going to run. They want to keep that corner group hidden as long as possible.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense the way that you put it. So Bryce Young, pick 155 is his ADP. Matthew Stafford right there, so kind of an ADP toss up, and Jonnu Smith goes about a half round later. Have you been getting exposure to this particular tier of quarterbacks, or mostly staying?
Yeah, Stafford, Geno, Cam Ward, I'm assuming goes after those guys too. I definitely prefer those three over Bryce Young, and it's not that I'm expecting specifically Young to have a bad year. It's just, to me, the ideal year for Bryce Young is one where he still isn't very useful in fantasy, be it in a single game or over the course of the year. Quarterback 3, sure, but he's going at more like a quarterback 2.5 kind of price right now, and I am not interested in that.
Yeah, I definitely have more Cam Ward from this particular grouping. I have a lot of Stafford.
I'd rather have Daniel Jones, John. Do you have any idea how much it sickens me to say that?
That's tough. I do have an idea, and that's got to be hard. And then lastly, let's see here. I mean, Coker, again, like as a last round dart. But like going back to Chuba Hubbard for a second. So he's someone that we were very interested in drafting last year, where he was like a 13th, 14th round type of guy. These guys don't exist every single year, and it's or maybe they do, but it's not always so obvious. But do you think that there is sort of a Chuba Hubbard out there in this year's fantasy market, or are things like kind of too tightened up right now to where you can find like that level of screeching value where you get like a top 10 running back in the 13th round?
Right. I couldn't help but laugh because the answer that came to mind, no one's going to like it, and they already know what it is. But Travis Etienne, the price is, I think maybe Etienne's probably like 2 rounds more expensive, especially since I can't remember. It wasn't even that Cohen said like Etienne's our starter. Travis, not talking about the Panthers right now. It wasn't so much that somebody said that; it's just that Cohen was like, "Oh, we're not trading him," and then the assumption went from Travis Etienne is benched to actually he's starting for sure now. And I kind of assumed the second thing more so all along, but not because I felt so sure about it. It was just like, it's easy for me to take Travis Etienne if he's going to be there in like the 12th round. I'll just, auto pick that every time. But there's an injury risk with Travis Etienne that there probably is not with Hubbard. I think the Jacksonville offensive line is nowhere near as good of a run blocking group as the Panthers offensive line is. I do think Travis Etienne is more talented than Hubbard, but still more injury prone. There's just, he's not in the team's long-term plans. So that's another thing. It's in sharp contrast with Chuba Hubbard. Part of the reason, John, we were going at Hubbard last year is because all offseason Dave Canales was saying, like, I love this Chuba Hubbard guy. I think he's just great.
And everyone was like, no, I don't hear you. I only hear Jonathan Brooks.
Yeah, and not that I expected that contract extension. It was a good extension. I wouldn't have expected it to have happened for Hubbard a year ago. I would have bet against it. I would have assumed the Panthers were going to just let him walk. But yeah, he's clearly he has been in Canales' long-term plans, and I guess it's possible that Etienne wins over Cohen. I think on a talent basis, he definitely will. But I do think Etienne, he is just somewhat fragile, and pretty much any coach will get sick of a player who gets hurt, especially if they're not like politically tied together. Like if Etienne was Cohen's first round pick, then I'd be like, oh yeah, he's there's no way Cohen's gonna, he's got to make this pick look good, but he doesn't have to make Urban Meyer's pick look good or Trent Baalke's pick look good. So if they do get bored with Etienne, they'll ditch him in a way that I don't think the Panthers would have with Hubbard.
I don't think so either. So that's definitely a later round running back that has pretty significant upside. I'd say if I had one, and I'm not sure that I do.
Sorry, I'll say Stevenson. He's so cheap. It's definitely going to work.
This one is more contingent on James Conner getting hurt than anything, but I am a little bit interested in Trey Benson because I think Conner. I think the end of the peak is near. I don't know if the cliff is here necessarily, but like the years in which he's just like taking up all the production from that Cardinals backfield, maybe that starts to turn a little bit this year. And he has an injury history of his own. I really like Trey Benson coming out of college, so
yeah,
I'm interested in him at pick 140.
Right. The challenge with Trey Benson is just that his floor is pretty much a 0. There's a few guys in this range, like I guess you'd say maybe him and Scatabo, where it's like the floor is 0. Like they really are not assured anything at all. But there's a certain upside scenario. There's a certain maybe narrow path, but still a pretty clearly visible one. It's like if Conner gets hurt, Benson could kind of just go nuts. Like we don't know for sure whether he's good, but we also, that works both ways. Benson might be better than we think. He could also be worse than we think, but he's really athletic, a unique category of athlete for NFL running back. I feel like he almost looked like he played at a higher weight at Florida State than he did at the combine. I think he was like 216 at the combine when he ran that 4.39 40, which on the combine track, a sub 4.4 for a guy like that is
it's pretty good.
That's a unique threshold of weight and speed. So, Benson was a little bit raw, probably. Florida State, he didn't even get that many reps. They were kind of easing him in after that really nasty knee injury that he had at Oregon before that. So he's probably a little bit under-seasoned, but the tools grade with Benson was always like blue chip or close to it. So if the skills catch up, the the overall progress for him as a running back could be really substantial, really fast, because you're multiplying it by such a substantial, tools grade. So yeah, if Connor misses time, I should say, for sure, if Connor misses time, Benson becomes quite valuable. But I do think there's also a chance that, like you were saying, if Connor has a bit of a decline setting in, if James Conner becomes less James Conner this year and more Joik Bell or something, then Benson might kind of force his way onto the field, just because he might give them he might rip off some big carries that Connor would run tough for sure in his own right, but the speed part could become more significant this year.
So therefore, it's not a total like dart throw or like a pick you want to waste at that stage of the draft, but I could see where Benson, kind of really has like a nice return potentially where you're getting him, and he'd obviously be like your fourth or your fifth running back at that stage. So
this is a good range here. I think Jaden Blue aside, I mean, he's interesting, but to me, Davis, Benson, Gorendo, Algier all have scalability up to top 10 running back if the player ahead of them gets hurt.
Right.
Whereas with Rachaad White could be a similar thing with Bucky. I mean, Rachaad White was really valuable before Irvin got there, but with Blue, I'm just kind of not that interested, because I think his upside scenario is like good flex start.
Yeah, like I don't see him getting even like
he might be Austin Eckler this year. Like Austin Eckler with Washington right now, Jaden Blue might be that good. Like that's about all it is.
That's a good framing of it. A sobering one. Because everyone wants to see the speed and be like, okay, well, he must be unbelievable. But they're kind of like volume and skill limitations there in Blue's case. But I think that about covers it for this here edition of the RotoWire Fantasy Football Podcast. Again, big thanks to our sponsors over at Circa, over at Fantrax, and over at the NFFC. And again, celebrating RotoWire's new look, new redesign, new rebrand, Purple Rain. Go ahead, go to rotowire.com, use that code PURPLE, 25% off any subscription. Jump on that now because that only runs through July 7th. For Mario Puig, I'm John McKechnie. Thanks for listening.